But so there are some things that are great until you wear them out. Like, you find a favorite song, you love this song, and then you just grind it into the ground until you can't stand it anymore. I do that. Drives people that listen to music with me in my truck absolutely crazy. I remember when I was in 4th or 5th grade for Christmas one year, I got the Big Willie style cassette tape, if you know what I'm talking about, and I was shoveling the driveway, and I just listened to that thing over and over and over to now, like, I cannot stand any of the songs that were on that tape. But that's what I do. But there are some things, I think, that are important enough that even though you hear them on repeat, that honestly, we need to keep hearing them. Like, you might get tired of it, but it's one of those things that it's so true, so core to who we are, that we can't ever get tired of it or push it aside. And this morning, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at one of those truths that sits at the very center of the Bible, but also our human reality. I feel like for the past several weeks, as we've been in our series in Acts, like, this is the one thing that we've hit on, and it's over and over and over again. And this morning, I'm going to try to grind it into the ground so that we get this. And here it is. It is that the root problem of humanity is idolatry. I feel like for the past several weeks, all we've talked about is idols and idolatry. But God created us to love and worship Him above all things, and our sin is that we've exchanged love and worship of Him for love and worship of something less. The story of Scripture is that God is rescuing His people from the things that they've chosen to worship instead of Him. Like, that's what conversion is. Conversion, faith in Jesus, coming to believe in the Bible is more than just a get out of hell free card or promising to stop cussing or being more moral or start going to church. But conversion is seeing and worshiping God for who He really is. It's not just submitting to Him, but it's loving Him. I mean, think about it. If obedience were the goal, my dog Larkin would be killing it. He'd be absolutely killing it. He does exactly what he's told. He comes when I say come. He sits when I say sit. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't cuss. If I made him be here right now, he would be here right now. And by most standards, he is an excellent Christian. But God didn't create us just to obey. He created us to worship. And if you get that, then Acts 19 is going to come alive for you this morning. So that's where we're going to be. Acts 19 actually starts on page 83 in the Bible and the chairs around you. But the verse that we're going to read is on page 84. But this is going to come alive to you this morning. This is the story of Paul going into yet another city. So for 3 weeks, we've seen Paul arrive in 3 different cities. 3 weeks ago, it was Athens. Last week, we saw him in Corinth. And this week, we're going to see him show up in Ephesus. And as he gets to Ephesus, he's confronting idols. He, again, flips the culture there on its head, and people lose their minds over it. Because that's what happens when God moves in on your idols. He exposes them, He dismantles them, and when that happens, sometimes we fight back. Now, before we start thinking, like, well, obviously, those are ancient people. They worshipped statues and temples. We're more sophisticated than that, right? We got to pump the brakes. Like, they weren't bowing down to just metal and wood and gold. They were bowing down to what that metal and that wood and what that gold promised. They were bowing down in worship in worship of power and money and sex and control and family stability. We chase those same things. They're not just bowing down to statues for the statue. They're bowing down for what that statue promised them. That's why this story of Ephesus isn't just ancient history, but it's what happens every single time we're confronted with the gospel. Now, Ephesus, like the other cities that Paul showed up to, wasn't just another city. Ephesus was different than Athens and Corinth. Ephesus was like the crown jewel of the Roman Empire at the time. It was the main port, so the economy flowed through Ephesus. It had the largest amphitheater in the world, one of the biggest libraries, and had a massive temple to the goddess Artemis. And this was, at the time, it's considered still one of the 7 wonders of the world. And so in Acts 19, Paul, he rolls into Ephesus, But he's not the first one there preaching the gospel. Before Paul got there, a guy named Apollos actually showed up to Ephesus first and starts preaching the gospel before Paul ever gets there. And this is really important because this shows how the gospel usually advances. The gospel doesn't primarily advance through apostles or pastors, but through regular people. It's through men and women in the marketplace, people who fix stuff, crunch numbers, teach kids, sell products, people like you. Like, this is where the gospel advances. It's by people who are sitting in the rows, not usually by the ones standing on the stage. And that's something that I love to remind you of, because I think too many of us think evangelism is something the professionals do. It's something that those who are on church staff, like, that's your job. Your job is to evangelize, but that's not true. Like, yes, we should, but you're the front line. You're the one that God has strategically placed in your office, in your workplace, in your shop, in your classroom, on the job site. Like, I don't know if you know this, everybody doesn't love pastors. There are people who will never listen to a word I say because I'm a pastor. But you have credibility with them. You've built relationships with them. You've earned their trust. Like, you've got capital with them that I will never have. So, while you're out there living that out in your world, Paul in Acts 19 is going to show us what it looks like when somebody rolls up their sleeves and actually does that and allows God to move through them. So, Acts chapter 19, starting in verse 11, page 84 in that Bible. It'll be up on here on the screen as well. But after Paul rolls into Ephesus, this is what we see happening, picking up in verse 11. God was performing extraordinary miracles by Paul's hands, so that even face cloths or aprons that had touched his skin were brought to the sick, and the diseases left them, and the evil spirits came out of them. Like, that's kind of wild, right? That God's moving through Paul in such a way that even his dirty laundry is healing people. Like, Paul changes his clothes, takes it off, it touches somebody with a demon or sickness, and they're healed. And then what happens is this group of spiritual hustlers, essentially, they catch wind of what Paul's got going on, this power that Paul has. And the Bible tells us that they are these itinerant Jewish exorcists. So, okay, what is an itinerant Jewish exorcist? Think of traveling Ghostbusters, all right? So these guys are like the traveling Ghostbusters, and they want to cash in on what Paul's got going on. And this brings us to one of my absolute favorite stories in the entire Bible. It's a failed exorcism that leads to a fight that would have gone absolutely viral if it would have happened in 2025. You would have seen videos of this fight everywhere. So there's these 7 guys, they're brothers, and they are the sons of a Jewish priest named Sceva. So they call themselves the 7 sons of Sceva. Sounds like a terrible name for a boy band or a really good name for a binge-worthy Netflix show. So then what happens is these guys, they confront a demon-possessed man because they've seen Paul do this. They're like, you know what, we're going to cash in on this. We're going to be part of this exorcism-busting team. So we're going to go in. So these 7 guys, they confront this demon-possessed man. And in verse 13, this is what they say. I command you by the Jesus that Paul preaches. Now, do you see how that's structured? They don't say, I command you by my Lord Jesus. I don't command you by the God of Abraham. I don't command you by the Jesus that I know. I command you by the Jesus that Paul preaches. They don't know Jesus. They've heard of him. They know Paul talks about him, but that's it. Like, they have no relationship, no true commitment or discipleship of Jesus. They're just trying to take advantage of this situation. Like, if Paul can use that name, we can use that name too. And then we have one of the funniest, most terrifying moments in all of the Bible. One of the demons answers back. Verse 15, the demon says, I know Jesus, and I recognize Paul, but who are you? Like, that's a bad day. You don't want to be in that fight right there. When a demon looks you in the eye and says, okay, Jesus, yes, Paul, bro, you're not even on the list. I don't even know who you are. And then look what happens in verse 16. The man who had the evil spirits jumped on them, overpowered them all, and prevailed against them, so that they ran out of the house naked and wounded. Now, Luke could have just said naked or wounded. He doubles down. It's like Luke is saying, I want to make sure everybody knows that these dudes got wrecked. I don't know if Luke had some history with the 7 sons of Sceva, if he had a little side beef with them, and he's like, you know what? I am going to make sure we leave these details in there just so everybody knows what happens. And we're gonna go ahead and we're going to establish a universal truth right now. If you start a fight and you're fully clothed, and you run away naked, like, you lost. And you lost bad. Like, that's not just a physical beating. That is physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological trauma. You're going to need friends, therapy, and probably a blanket. And so then picking up, this is what happens after seeing all what this happened. Verse 17. When this became known to everyone who lived in Ephesus, both Jews and Greeks, they became afraid. And the name of the Lord Jesus was held in high esteem. And many who had become believers came confessing and disclosing their practices. Many who had practiced magic brought their books and burned them in front of everyone. So what's happening? Revival. Revival's going on. Fear of Jesus fall on the city. People start converting. They're confessing sin. People who've been dabbling in darkness and magic, they bring all their books and they burn all their Harry Potter. They throw them all in a fire. Just kidding. If you can watch Harry Potter, I don't care. You can watch Harry Potter. And so the reason that they make this point is because back then, people would collect magic books and sorcery books as kind of a status symbol. Like, we do the same thing. We just use different things, like cars, electronics, collections, baseball cards, things like that. But these people would collect books, like religious books, sorcery books, magic books, and the more you had, it was kind of a higher status. They were worth a lot. And so the scholars actually estimate that the amount of money that was burned during this time was about $7 million. And in one day, gone. Why? Because when Jesus becomes precious to you, everything else starts to look cheap. And so they're burning all of this stuff, and then as they're burning it, this guy, Demetrius, sees all this money going up in flames, and he can't take it. So we meet this guy, Demetrius. He's a businessman in Ephesus. He owns this chain of shops selling, like, think trinkets, little silver idols of Artemis, like keychains, statues, pendants, like all the Artemis merch at the temple. Because tourism around the temple would have been huge, massive. Hotels, restaurants, shops, like a whole ecosystem was built around this temple that they had there. Like, you could buy scrolls, jewelry, probably like a donkey cart bumper sticker that said, "Artemis is my co-pilot." And so Demetrius, he sees all of this happening, and then he calls a meeting with the other businessmen in Ephesus, and this is what he says in verse 25. Men, you know that our prosperity is derived from this business. Translation, if this gospel keeps spreading, we're going to go broke. And so he continues, verse 27. Not only do we run a risk that our business may be discredited, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis may be despised and her magnificence come to the verge of ruin. So what he's saying is, hey, we're going to lose everything. We're even going to lose the temple to the God that we built. If we lose this temple, then we lose our God. Now, when we look back at the pattern of Paul as he's been showing up in different places in Athens and Corinth and now in Ephesus, what has Paul been preaching the whole time? Gods made with hands are not gods. Now, that seems pretty self-evident, right? That if you can mold it, if you can sell it, if you can build it, or if you can lose it, it's not divine. But that's not just true for ancient idols, it's true for modern ones too. Any god that you have to imagine or edit or soften, that's not a God worth worshiping. Like, that's what happens when someone says, well, you know, my God would never do that, or that's not the Jesus that I worship. Well, if what you're saying is contradictory to the God of the Bible, then that God, he only exists in your mind. Because the real God will offend you. He will confront you. He'll blow your categories. He'll crush your pride. If your God never challenges you, he never convicts you, if all he does is affirm you in your preferences, your politics, you haven't met the God of Scripture. You've just created and you're worshiping a glorified version of yourself. But the real God, the true God, the God of the Bible will confront you and your idols. This is what happened in Ephesus, and Demetrius, he uses it to whip this crowd into a frenzy. So he gives this speech, the crowd erupts, chaos everywhere, and then they storm this massive amphitheater. 25,000 people pack inside. Now, we're talking about almost 2,000 years ago. A 25,000 person capacity structure was built. I mean, this is amazing. And for 2 straight hours, they chant, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Think, just 2 hours, they're just chanting to their God. Now, this temple, 25,000 people, that's the same size as TQL Stadium downtown. So imagine FC Cincinnati, playoff game, passionate crowd, everybody standing on their feet, doing their FC chants, the Baileys banging their drums, they're popping their smoke. But instead of cheering on their team, they're worshiping a false god. That's the scene here. That's the crowd size. That's what's going on in Ephesus. The gospel collided with their idols, and the city goes ballistic. In verse 32, it says, some were shouting one thing and some another. Probably like half the stadium on one side, like at Bengals, like, who, day. It's like, great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Great is Artemis. That's what's going on. Some were shouting one thing, some another, because the assembly was in confusion. I love this part. Most of them didn't even know why they had come together. People shouting, and they're like, great is Artemis. I don't even know why we're here. But they're just shouting. Chaos, noise, confusion. People can't even tell you why they're there. No idea why they're mad. Their favorite media outlet just told them to be mad. And so Paul, being Paul, he sees this crowd. If you know anything about Paul, he's kind of a bold fella. He sees this crowd, captive audience, large stadium. He's like, you know what? I'm going to start preaching to them now. Like, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to preach to this crowd. This is a great opportunity. Paul also surrounded himself with some wise friends. And his friends said, Paul, it's a bad idea. They don't like you. They're mad at you right now. It's about to be a full citywide riot. Should probably sit this one out. So what does Paul do? He listens to his friends. He lives to preach another day. So this is the scene in Ephesus in Acts chapter 19. We get a front row look at how idols work, not just in ancient cities, but in our own hearts. So we're going to pull out 4 truths about idols from Acts 19. Number 1, idols promise what only God can provide. Like, that's the essence of idolatry right there. An idol is anything that promises you the kind of security, joy, satisfaction, peace that only God can give you. In Ephesus, Artemis was that promise. Artemis was their security blanket. They believed that Artemis was their protector and their provider. She'd be the one that could guarantee fertility and financial success and prosperity. Artemis would protect them from safety and harm. Like, the mindset was simple. If we have Artemis, life is good. Life is stable. The future is bright. But then Paul shows up preaching another gospel. Paul shows up preaching, hey, there's only one source of life. There's only one true source of peace. And this source is not found in a temple, not built by hands, not found in a business model, but his name is Jesus. And now, like, we don't carve our idols out of marble anymore, but the lie hasn't changed. Our idols have just gotten better branding, but they whisper the same seductive message. If you finally have this, you'll finally be okay. The question for us becomes, what is that voice asking you? Like, what is that this? That if I just have this, I'll be fine. If I could just land that job, I'd finally feel secure. If I could just have a solid marriage, I'd finally feel whole. If my kids would just turn out right, then I would finally have peace. If I could just make this much money, then I'd finally find rest. Like, idols aren't usually bad things. Those are good things. Job, career, kids, success, money, like, they're not bad things. They're usually good things that we've elevated into ultimate things. We've taken good gifts from God and we've made them into gods. Like, think about a mom who finds her entire identity around being a perfect parent with a perfect kids. When your kids thrive, you feel worthy, but when they struggle, you spiral. Because her sense of value is tethered to their success. Now think of the pressure that puts on the kids, that your worth as an adult is dependent upon the performance of a child. Like, parenting is a good thing. Parenting is a gift from God, but when it becomes the thing, it becomes a God thing. Or think about a businessman. Draws his security from his success. As long as the numbers are up, he's fine. Good quarter, we're up here. But one bad quarter, one missed deal, and he's unraveling because the God that he trusted in to come through ultimately let him down. So let me ask you the hard questions. Like, could you be okay if you never advanced in your career? What if the big break that you've been waiting for never comes? What if you never have kids? Or if you do have kids, what if they never make the honor roll or play a varsity sport? What if your health never improves? What if your work, your effort, your talent never gets noticed? Like, if the answer is no, I can't be okay if some of those things never happen, it might be because something other than God has taken his seat at the center of your life. That's the truth about idols. They're not just in the world somewhere, but they live right here, beneath the surface, and they burrow deep into our hearts. Which brings us to our next point. Idols pull the deepest strings of your heart. Your fears, your anger, and your desires. When your idolatry gets threatened, people get angry, and sometimes violent. That's what we see in Ephesus, because their idol isn't just a preference, it's their lifeblood. It's where they find their identity. In Ephesus, Artemis was their protector. Her temple was their pride. Mess with her, and you're messing with our safety, our worth, our economy, our identity. We have to protect this at all costs. So the question for us is, what's our protector? Like, what's the thing that if it were stripped away from you would leave you spiraling? Like, what makes you most anxious? What makes you most bitter? What's the one thing that you just can't forgive? Like, those are clues. Trace them backwards, and you'll usually find something that's taken up too much place in your heart. I know it's true for me. My idols show up in my anxiety and my worry more than anywhere else. Like, I'll open the door to my heart a little bit. Like, as a pastor, like, I want to lead well. I want to pastor well. I want to work hard. Like, I want to take my job seriously without taking myself too seriously. But if I'm honest, sometimes I care way too much whether people like the sermon or not. Like, I can find my identity in that. My emotional state can rise and fall on Sunday attendance or sermon feedback. Like, I can walk off of a stage thinking, I killed that one. And then on the way out, somebody shakes my hand and says, And then I can spiral and I can't shake it. Like, and that reveals something deep down. Like, my identity has gotten so tangled up in my performance that it exposes my tendency to find my identity in how well I'm doing my job. That somewhere along the way, I started believing the lie that if I preach well, then I'm worthy. And the flip side of that is, if I don't, then I'm worthless. And that's exactly what idols do. They take something good and they twist it. They turn gifts into burdens. They turn peace into pressure, to where worship actually becomes weight. Like, that's the sinister power of idolatry. It doesn't just tempt you, but it shapes you. It takes a good thing and it slowly convinces you that this is your identity. If you fail at this, you're a nobody. Idols wrap themselves in good intentions most of the time. Like, they come disguised as healthy ambition, family goals, career drive, ministry excellence, but underneath, the whisper is always the same. If you don't nail this, you're nothing. Because when you idolize something, it stops becoming a gift. Stops becoming something that you delight in, and it starts becoming something that you depend on. You cling to it for meaning, for validation, for safety, and the tighter you grip it, the more it squeezes the life out of you. You see this in marriage all the time. Like when your spouse becomes your ultimate source of worth and security, like you don't just love them, but you need them to make you okay. And that can be crushing pressure for any human to carry, because suddenly this relationship that was meant to bring you joy and love, it becomes fragile and tense because one person's heart has been loaded with divine expectations. Like if your spouse has to be your sense of validation and worth, like they're not a God and they will let you down. Or take work. If success is your idol, every win feels like oxygen, but every loss feels like suffocation. You can't rest, you can't stop, because in your mind, if I stop performing, then I stop mattering. But idols don't just demand our affection, they demand our protection. Because you start living in defense mode, afraid that anything might expose or threaten the thing that you've built your life around. But here's the irony. It's not just that our idols protect us, but we have to protect our idols. Idols must be protected. They can't stand on their own. That's our third point. This is how it always goes. When you've built your hope around an idol, you will do whatever it takes to defend it. Like you will justify your choices, your actions, your decisions to protect what it is that you've built your life around. So this is where we ask ourselves, like, what am I protecting? Am I protecting my image? Am I protecting my comfort, my control? Because one of the easiest places to spot an idol is to look at what makes you panic when it's threatened. Like whatever you rush to defend usually reveals what you really depend on. If success is your idol, you'll constantly manage your image. You'll replay conversations in your head, editing every sentence, like making sure you didn't sound stupid or incompetent. You'll overwork, not out of love for excellence, but out of fear of slipping, fear of not being seen. Then you start living your life kind of like your own PR manager, spinning, defending, curating perception, where failure ends up feeling like death. If comfort's your idol, you'll do whatever it takes to avoid being stretched. You will avoid every hard conversation. You won't let people in. You'll keep everybody at arm's length. You'll say no to serving or stepping up because deep down you care more about protecting your peace than pursuing God's purpose. You might even baptize it in Christian language and call it boundaries. But in reality, you're just building a safety bubble around your idol of a life of ease. If control is your idol, you'll micromanage everything and everyone. You'll plan, you'll schedule, you'll track, and you'll stress because what if something doesn't go as planned? What if everything isn't perfect all the time? You might even pray prayers of surrender like, Lord, I trust you as long as you stick to my spreadsheet. Like that's what control looks like. If approval is your idol, you'll become a people pleaser. I try saying that 5 times fast. If approval is your idol, you'll become a people pleaser. You shapeshift in every room. Like whatever crowd you're with, you become that crowd. You're a chameleon, constantly scanning faces for feedback, looking for affirmation. Silence feels like rejection, but that's what idols do. They demand your protection. They turn you into their full-time security guard. And here's the cruel irony is that the more you protect them, the less peace you have. You're always on edge, always calculating, always afraid that something might threaten your God. But the real God doesn't need you to protect him. He protects you. That leads us into our last point of the idols. Idols always take, demanding your time, your peace, and your sacrifices. See, ancient idols, they demanded offerings, grain, animals, and sometimes even human lives. And while our idols might look different, they're just as demanding. The altar hasn't gone away, it's just been rebranded. Now we call sacrifices priorities, goals. This is the grind. Like if money is your idol, you'll sacrifice integrity. You'll blur lines, exaggerate numbers, bend truth, and then you'll spiritualize it by calling it strategy. You'll start believing that generosity is risky, but hoarding it is wise. If approval is your idol, you'll sacrifice authenticity. Like you'll become a mirror, just reflecting whatever you think people want to see. And late at night, you'll wonder why no one really knows you, and it's because you're never going to show the real you. If pleasure or romance is your idol, you'll sacrifice purity. You'll compromise boundaries, chase unhealthy relationships. You'll hand your heart away way too easily because feeling unloved for just a moment or feeling loved for a moment feels safer than being alone for a season. And I know this is at least true for me. I think the most sobering example of idolatry is achievement. Because when achievement becomes your God, the people that you love most, they're the ones that you sacrifice. In the ancient world, false gods often demanded child sacrifices. Now, we read that and we think, how could they? How could they sacrifice their own kids? But then you look at the world, and yeah, not to the same scale. We're not placing them on an altar. But we're not that different. Like we sacrifice our own kids' childhood for our sense of self-importance. Like we push them harder, not for their joy, but so that we can manage our image. We sit beside them at dinner, but we scroll through emails instead of listening to their stories. And then one day we wake up and we have an incredibly impressive resume, but an empty relationship with our children. I'm telling you, I'm going to open the door to my heart. This is mine. Like when I was writing this sermon, it was finishing up, 8 o'clock, Wednesday night. Amy was at small group. I'm polishing off this very section that I'm talking through right now. I'm writing about sacrificing time with your kids, and I could hear my son in the backyard playing basketball by himself, and I could not bring myself to shut my laptop. There's always going to be another sermon to write. There's always going to be more to do, but I've only got so many nights left when I can go outside and play basketball with my boy. I'm not saying that my job is an idol. I love my job. This is what God's called me to do, but in that moment, I could easily see how things start to take God's place. How quickly that I'm doing this for God can turn into I'm doing this instead of obeying God. Like that's the thing about idols. They always take, they never give. They promise life, but they drain it. They keep asking for more until there's nothing left but emptiness and exhaustion. That's how they sneak in. They disguise themselves as devotion, responsibility, excellence. They whisper just one more email, one more task, one more late night, then you'll rest. But that finish line keeps moving, doesn't it? Like that goalpost keeps getting pushed back. Achievement always wants more. Success always wants more. Money always wants more. Love always wants more. Approval always wants more. A little more time, a little more compromise, a little more you. But here's the good thing. Jesus is the only God who doesn't demand your sacrifice to be pleased with you. He became the sacrifice to bring you back. He's not begging for more of you. He's begging you to come to him. Like Paul, he didn't march into Ephesus with a clever marketing strategy or better slogans. He came preaching the gospel of Jesus that tore down idols, and he lifted up the only God that truly satisfies. He preached 3 truths that flipped the whole city, and they still flip our lives now when we're confronted with the gospel, and it's these. The first one, the one true God. The true God alone gives life. He gives real peace, real joy, and real rest. He's not made with human hands. He's not something that you build with your effort or imagination. He's the creator of all things. His love is more faithful than romance. His promises more secure than money. His presence more sustaining than comfort. Like his future is more fulfilling than success. This is why Jeremiah 2:13 says this. For my people have committed a double evil. They have abandoned me, the fountain of living water, and dug cisterns for themselves, cracked cisterns that cannot hold water. Now, digging wells, cisterns that hold water, some of you may not understand like what this is talking about at the time, but this is what God is saying. God is saying when we chase other sources of satisfaction, what we're doing is we're trading a never-ending fountain of fresh, delicious water for a leaky bucket. It's a picture of showing how idols promise fulfillment, but they always leave us empty and thirsty again. The second thing Paul showed them was the true God doesn't need your protection. He is your protection. Every idol demands your energy, your effort, and your constant attention. You have to keep it propped up. But this is what David wrote in Psalm 27. He said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" We don't need to protect our light and our salvation. You don't have to obsess over your career to feel secure. You don't have to cling to a relationship to feel loved. You don't have to chase comfort to find peace. But God is your light, your salvation, your rock, your refuge, your fortress. And once you rest in him, you'll realize all of those things that you were trying to hold together were never really holding you, but God was. And then lastly, the true God gave his own sacrifice, the only one who truly saves. This is where we see a strong contrast between every idol and Jesus. Every false god says, if you fail me, I'll destroy you. Jesus says, you failed me and I saved you. Every false god says, bleed for me. Jesus says, I bled for you. Every idol says, earn my love, but Jesus, when he was hanging on the cross, he said, it is finished. There's nothing left for you to do. That's the gospel. I love how Tim Keller said it. He put it this way. He said, Jesus is the only God who, when you obtain him, will satisfy you, and when you fail him, will forgive you. Like, that's the difference. Every idol enslaves you with fear, but Jesus frees you with love. So let me ask you this. Have you seen God for who he truly is? Like, have you returned to God as God? I'm not just talking about just prayed a prayer or just attended church, but truly returned your heart, your worship, your affection to him as Lord. Like, maybe you've built your own altar to a lesser God that has never delivered. But right now, today, like, Jesus is inviting you to lay that down, to lay down your striving, to lay down your fear, lay down your idol. Because idols are leaky buckets, but Jesus himself told us in John 4, whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. See, that's not just a verse, that's a promise. Like, he's the only one that can fill what your idols only imitate. Let's go to the Lord in prayer as we close.